Each year we talk to farmers who have manure, and usually the discussion goes something like this. I've got a bunch of manure, I just want to get rid of it. And I just think that's exactly what we do not want to do. Manure is worth a lot of money. There are so many good nutrients in there, everything from N, P, and K to the micronutrients. So if you manage it correctly, you can get a great amount of fertility value out of it. Don't think of it as a waste product. It's fertilizer, and it's some of the best fertilizer there is.
Well, let's start with the negative side of manure. Everybody says, oh, when you hear manure, you think, oh, stink. Oh, that's going to smell really bad. And you know what? If you're smelling manure, you could be managing it a little bit better. The reason that I say that is what you're often smelling is going to be ammonia leaving that manure. It's nitrogen fertilizer leaving that manure. So if you can put manure onto fields without smelling it, chances are you're going to keep more of that nitrogen fertilizer.
Well, that sounds great, but how are you going to do that?
The way that you do it is by injecting it underneath the soil. Whether you're going down 6 inches or a foot or even 2 feet deep with a zone builder, if you're putting manure on deep in the ground, that's a great way to keep that nitrogen in your field, because you're going to basically cover it up with dirt and hold it down there. And as that nitrogen tries to move through the soil, it's going to get tied up by the soil and it's going to be taken in by growing plants. So injecting manure deep is a great way to keep nitrogen in your fields, but it's also good for the P and K.
Well, with P and K, they don't move in soil. In other words, when you put phosphorus and potassium at a certain spot in the soil, they're pretty much immobile, especially phosphorus. Now, potassium in really light soils, it could move. But phosphorus, I mean, almost for sure, it is exactly where you put it. And one of the biggest issues we see with guys that have lots of manure and they keep spreading that manure in the same fields year after year, or for that matter, even just guys broadcasting dry fertilizer, unless they work that ground a lot, they end up with most of their fertility in the top 2, 3, 4 inches of soil, when many of their plant roots are down deeper in the soil. Think about it this way. If you have a drier summer too, where in the soil is the wettest later in the summer when it is dry? Well, obviously it's going to be down a little bit deeper in the soil, and most plant nutrients get into the plants with water. You just don't want all your nutrients in the top few inches of soil. So like what Darren said, injecting some liquid manure 20 inches deep, we've done a bunch of that on our farm, and you know what? It really works, because what we found even on our farm, we've got a lot of our nutrients in the top 3 to 6 inches of soil. I want to get a lot more nutrients down deeper in the soil now. That is really important. So what we're saying here is we've already given you the first couple of tips if you want to get the most out of your manure. Number 1, inject it. Number 2, inject it deep. If you can get it down 12 inches to 20 inches deep, you're going to be way ahead of a lot of your neighbors after just a few years.
Well, Brian started off our talk about manure by saying if you've got too much manure, not enough ground, you may just think, oh, this is a commodity I need to get rid of.
A waste product.
Yeah, a waste product. But in our case, we've got more ground than we have manure. And we found a lot of benefit by just applying a low rate of manure on all the acres rather than a high rate of manure on just a few acres, because there is a lot more to manure than just N, P, and K. Basically, you can't apply commercial N, P, and K and say, oh, this is going to equate right to what that manure is going to provide me. There's a lot more in manure than just the NPK.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are good things in the manure and also bad things. The good things are stuff like sulfur, micronutrients, and even some bacteria. We think there are a lot of beneficial bacteria that end up helping plants, and that's one of the reasons why manure is often better than commercial fertilizer, even with the exact same analysis. But one of the things that's bad in manure is salt. And what we found on our farm is when we've run higher rates of manure, so I'm talking like 8,000 to 10,000 gallons of liquid dairy manure, we have actually hurt our yield a little bit compared to going 4,000 to 6,000 gallons of liquid dairy manure supplemented with some commercial fertilizer. And it all comes down to salt load. We don't want to put too much salt on in any given year. If you do manure right and you use some manure, supplement it with some commercial fertilizer, you should have phenomenal yields. You should be beating everybody in the county if you do it right.
When we say manure, that's kind of a broad term, meaning it could be from any animal. So depending on if you're getting poultry manure or cattle manure, hog manure, whatever, depending on the animal and the ration that animal's being fed, the nutrient value in that manure is going to change. So you need to do some analysis with whatever manure you're going to apply to your fields and make sure you aren't overdoing it on fertility value that you're putting out there. Also, with different animals, you may be applying it dry or liquid. That's going to change up a lot about how we think about this manure. One of the concerns we would have would be with phosphorus.
Yeah, with phosphorus, This is a big issue around the country. What happens with phosphorus, we told you it doesn't move. The only time it does move is when soil actually moves along with it. In other words, if you get erosion and the soil goes into a lake or a river or a stream, did you know that phosphorus is typically the limiting factor when it comes to algae growth in water? So if we get dirt in there that carries along with it phosphorus, that is not a good thing. This is another reason why we want you to inject your manure deep. If you can keep that phosphorus out of the top couple inches of soil, you're in great shape.
Well, as you can tell, Brian and I are big fans of using manure for its fertility value on our fields. One thing we're not a fan of, though, is our weed of the week. We'll show you how to kill this tough weed later in the show.